Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is the press conference of the World Meteorological Organization. We are today presenting our State of the Climate 2024 update. It gives details not only of global average temperatures, but also of other climate change indicators and climate change impacts. Everything is available, should have been sent to you via the UNFCCC under embargo. If you don't have the materials, please see me at the end. We have the press release available in all the official UN languages. I'm joined today by Professor Celeste Saulo, who is the Secretary General of the World Meteorological Organization. She will give a very brief presentation on the key messages, the highlights of this report. And then on my right, I have Professor Christopher Hewitt, who is Director of the World Meteorological Organization's Climate Services Division. So without any further ado, I will hand over the floor to Professor Saulo. Thank you.
Good afternoon to all. Dear press members, it's my pleasure to be here today when the World Meteorological Organization is issuing its State of the Climate 2024 update. This is front page. And once again, we are sending out a red alert, one of many that I have issued in less than 1 year as Secretary General of the World Meteorological Organization. And this is another SOS to the planet. The State of Climate update confirms that 2024 is on track to be the hottest year on record, hotter even than 2023, which smashed all previous records. 2015-2024 will be the warmest 10 years on record. The pace of climate change in the space of just one generation is alarming. What will it look like for the next generation, for our children and our children's children? When I look in the eyes of my 1-year-old grandson, I feel responsible for his future, for the future of so many millions of other children. This is what drives me as Secretary General of the World Meteorological Organization. The January-September 2024 global average near surface temperature was 1.54 degrees Celsius above the 1850-19 pre-industrial area. There is a margin of uncertainty of plus minus 0.13 degrees Celsius in this. WMO consolidates 6 international data sets to give a single authoritative temperature figure to inform policy making. Is that figure you can see there. This includes Copernicus Climate Change Service, which issued its report last week. So what are the implications of the WMO report for the Paris Agreement? What are the implications? As monthly and annual warming temporarily surpass 1.5 degrees Celsius, it is important to emphasize that this does not mean that we have failed to meet the long-term temperature goal of the Paris Agreement. Recorded global temperature anomalies at monthly and annual timescales can vary widely because of natural phenomena. For example, El Niño has played a role in the 2024 warmth. The long-term temperature goal set in the Paris Agreement refers to global temperature levels sustained as an average over decades. In order to inform decision makers on this, WMO has established an international task team of experts. The initial indication is that long-term global warming is currently likely to be about 1.3 degrees Celsius compared to the 1850-19 baseline. There are more than just statistics, more than just graphs. Every fraction of a degree of warming matters and increases climate extremes, impacts, and risks. Temperatures are only part of the picture. Climate change plays out before our eyes on an almost daily basis in the form of extreme weather. This year, we saw record-breaking rainfall and flooding events and terrible loss of lives in so many countries, causing heartbreak to communities on every continent. The incredible amount of rain in Spain was a wake-up call. How much more water a warmer atmosphere can hold? Rapidly intensifying tropical cyclones cause a massive economic and human toll. We saw this with Hurricane Beryl, Helen, and Milton. Increased heat scorched dozens of countries, with temperatures topping 50 degrees Celsius on a number of occasions. That is too hot to be handled. El Niño aggravated drought and hunger. Ocean content in 2023 was the highest on record, and preliminary data showed 2024 has continued that trend. Ocean warming is irreversible on centennial to millennial timescales. Glacier loss is worsening. Antarctic sea ice extent was the second lowest on record. Sea level rise, driven by the warming oceans and melting ice, is accelerating and has doubled over the period of the past 30 years. And greenhouse gases, the drivers of our rapid climate change, are at record observed levels. Carbon dioxide concentration has increased by 51% since the pre-industrial era. It has increased by more than 11% in just 2 decades. To conclude, I would reiterate our urgent appeals that we have to rapidly reduce greenhouse gases emissions to mitigate the warming. We need to strengthen observations and monitoring of our changing climate, including through the WMO Global Greenhouse Gas Watch. And we need to step up support for climate change adaptation through climate information services and the Early Warnings for All initiative of the UN Secretary General. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Chris Hewitt, would you like to add anything to that? No, okay. Sorry, with that, I'm aware we do have a time limit here, so I will pass straight to questions. Before we say that, if we do have quite a lot of graphs of technical information that we didn't show here today because it's a press conference rather than a presentation. If you need any graphics on sea level rise, on ocean heat, on the long-term temperature trajectory, please let us know, and we can make available. We do have a link on the Trello board, and all the materials, including the raw data and Professor Saulo's comments just now, are available on that. Without any ado, I'll open the floor to questions. If you could just introduce yourself by name and affiliation, thank you. On the front row, we'll start with Seth Borenstein.
Thank you, Seth Borenstein, the Associated Press. For Dr. Saulo, in terms of the 1.5 Paris threshold, as you said, it's a long-term threshold, which often does not get defined well. Is it 2 decades? Is it 3 decades? And the concern I keep hearing among many analysts and climate activists is if it's even 2 or 3 decades, by the time you hit an average of 1.5 over 2-3 decades, you're at least 10 years in, and you're looking at 1.5 in the mirror, in the rear view mirror, and you're saying, by the way, we've already passed it. Given what you have, how close are we to putting it in the rearview mirror? And why not at some point just admit that 1.5 is no longer doable?
Well, thank you very much for your question. And certainly the definition on how to make that average is not ready yet. But as I mentioned, we have set up a group of experts to define how we could really address that number as an indicator that is realistic and it's also available on time to take further action. So the figure number 2 in our report highlights different possibilities to address that issue that you highlight. Maybe using the last 10 years is a possibility, to use statistical methods to project the trend and see what would be the next decade. Also using an average between observations and predictions for the next 10 years, 10 years of observations and 10 years of predictions. And also there is a possibility to estimate the warming induced by human activities so that we can add that on top of the observed values. So these are alternatives to really sort out what would be the tendency in the upcoming years. So not to react after the phenomena is already in place. So that, I think, in a way, touches your question. And certainly we will not give up on the 1.5 degrees. It's not possible, simply not possible. And we have the responsibility to keep that on top of our agenda, because we cannot move all the time our threshold. We need to adjust to our own thresholds and not move the limits. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Just to add to what Professor Saulo said, so we very much recognised this a year ago at COP. So we were reporting last year that 2023 was on track to be the warmest year at that time, and it was. And that year was 1.45 degrees, plus or minus 0.14 and 0.12. So already last year we knew that your question is clearly one that's going to get asked more and more about this 1.5 figure in the Paris Agreement. So we've spent the last year, exactly as Professor Saulo has said, trying to actually make progress on this. So these results are the initial results, and we hope to then take more to COP30 next year. So some of the methods that you raised and that Professor Saulo said exactly is what we're looking at with the international team of experts. We're doing this very much aligned with IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So please watch this space, but thank you for the question. We do recognise the importance of this.
Another question on the front row, and then we'll go through the back.
Thank you. Jayanta Basu from Telegraph newspaper, India. I have two quick questions. First one is that how you assess the impact of climate change-linked disaster in India during 2024. I'm saying this because a study in India has just been pointed out. In the first 9 months, 93% of the days, some part of India has received some disaster. So just would like to know how WMO is looking at India's position of disaster vis-a-vis climate change, number one. Number two, is there any assessment, any study, how the ongoing wars throughout the world, there are two major wars going on at this point of time, are contributing, if any, to the rising climate impact in the world?
Sorry, could you just repeat the second part of your question? Just repeat what the second part of your question.
Anyone?
No, sorry, just repeat what you said.
The question?
The second.
What I'm asking is because we all know that wars are extremely energy intensive. So the ongoing wars happening in Ukraine-Russia war and the Palestine-Israel war, are they contributing anything to the climatic impacts in the world, if any?
Thank you very much for your question. And in terms of the first one, And what the WMO recommends is, of course, what the scientific community is recommending is attribution studies to assess what's the responsibility of climate change on current impacts that we are all witnessing all around the world, India in particular, of course, with impressive temperatures and also heavy rains. We need to work on attribution studies. And this takes a while, but can be done by the scientific community, and that's how we recommend to work ahead. In terms of assessing what's the impact of wars, I would say that it's exactly the same methodology that has to be carried out by the scientific community. WMO has not assessed that, and it's not precisely our responsibility or our mandate to do that, but the scientific community, I'm sure they are working on that.
Just to follow up on the first part of that, in the update, there is actually a one-page which gives a glance at some of the extreme events of this year, and it will be updated when we issue our final report, which will be of March of next year, but I can share that with you. Thank you. Just there.
Umay Yılmaz, climate policy expert from Istanbul, Turkey. Thank you for all the information you have shared. We know that there are some innovations in climate services. How accurate can we predict natural disasters with that?
Thank you for your question. Well, it's very hard to predict a hazard. And then just to clarify, we don't think that we have natural hazards. We don't have natural disasters. What we have are natural hazards that in combination with exposure and vulnerability really explain the risk. And after the risk is increased by a very heavy hazard, extreme hazard, plus extreme exposure and vulnerability is where you have the catastrophe. Yeah. So in a way, that is very difficult to predict, but because it does not only speak about the natural system, which is also hard to predict and it has a lot of unpredictability, but it also has a component of social behavior, social vulnerability. And that's why under the Early Warnings for All initiative, we speak about this as a system where you have pillar one that is engaged in risk assessment, understanding the risk knowledge. We need to enhance the risk knowledge to understand what is the vulnerability of society. Then we have pillar two where we say, okay, we need to increase the monitoring system, the forecasting system. We need to enhance the effectiveness of that. Then the third pillar has to do with communication. So not only about connectivity, the physical connectivity or the virtual or the cloud connectivity, but it's also about communicating, how you communicate an early warning to a different community with different cultural background, with different needs, with different risk perception. And then in the end is how you build resilience. That is the fourth pillar. So an early warning system or addressing natural hazards is a compound of actions, and that's why we are engaging working with the Early Warnings for All initiative, because we believe that we need to reinforce all the pillars. I hope with this Early Warnings for All initiative, we will advance our understanding of risk, our strategies to forecast, and also our strategies to communicate and prepare for what is to come.
Thank you. I see one question there, and then another one at the back on the right. So just in the, yes, you in the center there. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all. I'm a journalist with China Media Group. I have two questions. The first one is, I believe WMO play the role of a watchtower when talking about action plans. So, what are the new dangers you guys observe in this new report, and what is the most foundable action and the most underfounded action so far? This is my first question. Second question is, in this scope, do you have any expectations for the role shall be played by the developing countries? Two questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So the first question, I don't know if you were being specific about China or in general, but in general. So it's difficult to say what are the, I think you said most underfunded, but some of the key areas where we're seeing huge impacts from changing climates for now and then projected into the future through IPCC assessment reports as examples, but there is a long list. So sea level rise, so we are seeing the ocean, the sea level rising, and we project that will continue to rise into the future, and that will have huge impacts on many low-lying coastal communities and small island developing states. And then another very hot topic, to choose that word deliberately, would be impact of heat waves. So we're growing impact of heat waves so far, and again, with the projections into the future, we expect those to get worse. But there are many, many other relevant areas. So I'm just picking out two there, but there are many: droughts, floods, tropical storms. But just to pick two from a list. It is a long list, unfortunately. Did you want to take the second one?
Yes, certainly I could take the second one in terms of the role of the Global South. I think that everyone has a role to play here. It's not about the North, not about the South. It's about a global community that is stressed because of inequality and climate change. So we need to act as soon as possible. We need to engage all the governments, regardless of whether they are from the developed world or the developing world. Of course, we understand that there is a just transition to go through, and we fully, of course, support the decision of the countries, but everyone has something to do, and the Global South in particular, because so many countries involved in the Global South, that any action that could be taken by the Global South could change the play. So certainly, I would say that everyone has an opportunity to change something, and we should take that opportunity.
We have time for just one or two very quick questions, just at the back, and then if we've got time, one there. Okay.
Hello, Jeremy Wilkes from Euronews. One question. You mentioned acceleration. Can you just elaborate a bit more on that, on the acceleration and the changes that you see? Are they beyond what you expected?
So, for example, I mentioned sea level. So sea level rise, we are seeing from the satellite records in particular, that is accelerating. The temperatures are more difficult. The plot, the graph we showed earlier, there's a lot of variability from year to year, even from decade to decade. So it's more difficult to say that is accelerating. But sea level rise, yes, in the observations, there's signs that's accelerating. And ocean heat content was another one that I think Professor Saulo mentioned. So we're just reporting on the state of what we've observed so far. So that is what we're observing in the climate system.
Okay, just one last question on the right here.
Yeah, Alejandro De Keyser from ICC. So, is there a relation between early spending on CapEx technology against how much is going to be need to spend in adaptation and correcting all these hazards and the impact on the population?
Sorry, is there a relationship between what?
early spending on technology, CapEx, low carbon, sustainable solutions against how much
Okay.
is going to be spent in the future in adaptation and correcting all these, the impacts of the climate change.
Okay. We always say that investment in hydrometeorological services. Do you want to talk to that?
Yes, certainly there are many alternatives where we could use our investments to accelerate the action. And we are always advocating for investing in national meteorological and hydrological services to increase the number of observations that we have, to understand what is happening, in particular in the Global South, where we are lacking many observations, particularly in the global oceans. So there are many investments that could help us not only to assess, but also to mitigate what is happening in terms of climate change. And also, of course, investing in clean energies and renewables like solar, wind, and so on is crucial for the just transition, so I would highlight those.
Thank you. I think with that, we're probably on our time limit, unless there's one very, very quick last question. Yeah, okay, just one very last.
Hello. Hi, my name is Daniele. I'm from the Global Consortium on Climate and Health Education at Columbia University and also from Brazil. And I would like to congratulate the WMO that this year you start to include the health part on your report, at least for the Latin America. And I think it's a very good way that we can show how this impact can impact our health and how it translates to people. But my question is regarding to the early warning system. I think you were supposed to be helping the countries to having their own early warning system. I just want to know where is WMO on this and what is the challenges to do this in place? Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question. Yes, certainly we are assisting countries in developing their early warning systems. 30 countries were first highlighted, prioritized by the UN Secretary General, mostly least developed countries and small island developing states. How we help them? Well, we have we organize workshops with all the 4 pillars that I mentioned before to assess what the country has in place, the gap between what they have in place and what they need, and then we build and we prepare a roadmap for them to follow. We help them to follow, not only us, UNDRR, ITU, and Red Cross is helping, is supporting the countries, but in the end, it's a country-driven approach. So whatever country wants to improve their early warning system, they should come to us, and we could work with them. But it's a collective effort. It cannot be done only from top-down approach, as you know.
Okay, thank you for everybody. With that, we have to wrap up. As I said, if you haven't received the materials, you need to see them, just come and see me outside afterwards. And thank you so much.